So let's say today I have to get rid of everything on my desk. That means all these headphone amplifiers, I have like 10 here, and keep only one thing on my desk. That would be So the Woo Audio WA7, more specifically the WA7 headphone amplifier, has been through many generations. For those of you that are not familiar with Woo Audio, it is a company that is run by Jack Woo, and I consider him one of the geniuses in hi-fi, really. He designed the first generation of the WA7 amongst many of his headphone amplifiers that are tube-based. And the first generation is something that I owned personally and had it for quite a bit until I changed to the second generation. Now the second generation came with the tube power supply, which made it look beautiful because instead of having this one unit, you would have two of those same looking units, one being a power supply and the other being a control unit, which I thought was like a fantastic, beautiful idea for those people like me that want to be a little bit more extra with their stuff. But now comes Jack Woo, who I admire very much, and he goes like, yo, you wanna review the third generation? And I'm like, there's a third generation? And I'm thinking to myself, what possibly can you do better? I mean, make it sound better a little bit? So I was like, what's different? What is different between the second generation and the third generation? And you know, one thing I learned about Woo Audio, or Jack Woo, and specifically, is that they make changes, they make changes. It's not like a small improvement. So the third generation is not only a headphone amplifier, but a balanced headphone amplifier with 4.4mm pentagon output in the front. And of course, you get the single-ended. And it's not only just a DAC, but here comes the highlight. It's a fully balanced tube preamplifier. But you may be asking, hey Jay, I don't see any RCA or XLR outputs in the back. How would I possibly connect it to my powered speakers or amplifier, for that matter? Well, with this. So yeah, just like that, 4.4mm balanced output to dual XLR, 3-pin, and you can connect it to your powered speakers and amplifiers as you wish. Now, as you can see in my setup, I'm using my NAD C298 amplifier and using the Woo Audio as a preamplifier to my KEF LS50 Metas, which is a bit extra, but I like it. But I love this on my desktop, and I said that this would be the piece on my desk if I had to get rid of everything else, because it's a great headphone amplifier. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the third generation here is much better sounding in the headphone section than the second generation. In fact, I think they sound pretty identical. It has that classic Woo Audio sound. And it's such a clean amplifier that, you know, obviously I haven't measured it, but from the second generation to the third generation, I think there's an audible difference in noise floor. The third generation is much cleaner, and I've been using many different headphones, especially my Sennheiser HD600 you saw in the intro. Those are my daily drivers. And quite frankly, it's so smooth, neutral, yet it brings out the best in the HD600. Like, if I had to choose a headphone amplifier for my HD600, I think this would be it. The pretty looks is just an extra. Like, it sounds good. Now, I know some audiophiles, and I'm guilty of this too, kind of separate the ugly and good sounding, you know, audiophile gear with beautiful but mediocre gear. This is like not that. Don't be fooled by the good looks. It actually performs. despite the small size on this unit, it sounds incredibly good. And the power is there to back it up. 1.5 watts out of the balanced 4.4 on this unit. That can probably drive like anything on the market right now, aside from the very unusual ones. But the main takeaway is this. This is a tube headphone amplifier and a preamplifier, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it has that tube characteristic without being too dark or too dull in the bass region. It has kick, it has tremendous amount of bass, and the high frequency is very sweet sounding, expected of a tube amplifier. And honestly speaking, it's very well tuned. Just like all the Woo Audio stuff, it has that classic Woo Audio sound. So, but then you might ask, Jay, what is this Woo Audio sound you're talking about? Well, I'm glad you asked. There's two different types of tube amplifier sound that I like and don't like. So, on one side, there is the modern tube amplifiers that sound like solid states. It's too bright, it's too forward sounding, it's trying to be more solid state than tube. Which then begs the question, why don't you just get a solid state amplifier? They're just more powerful, much easier to maintain because you don't have to switch out the tubes, etc., etc. More money for the tube amplifier as well because of the components. And then there is the other side where they take the vintage sound that I love so much, right? That old vintage sound of tube amplifiers sounding sweet and sparkly on the top end without being bright, smooth in the mid-range, good tone in the mid-range, but the bass is just a little bit mushy. That is the classic vintage tube sound. And then there's the really good modern sound that I like, which takes the vintage sound that I just described and makes the bass tighter, more focused, and the background noise darker. And that's what the Woo Audio sound is. Now, we haven't talked about too much of the DAC section, right? There's a DAC inside here. It's a Sabre DAC, ESS. It's good. I think it complements the unit quite well. And if you're just starting out and you just want all-in-one, then yeah, you can use the DAC inside here, no problem. But personally, I found it a little bit more wanting, and I'm so glad that Woo Audio included the RCA input, which means that you can upgrade your DAC 5-10 years from now. And I love that because DACs, again, change really quickly. So having that RCA input is very important. So I consider that a step in the right direction. Now, if I had to be picky, I have to say this is a balanced unit, but it only has RCA inputs, no balanced inputs. But I mean, it's a small unit. I'm being really picky here, but definitely a step in the right direction. Personally, I was using the Burson DAC that I have here, which I thought sounded better with the unit. And despite being like one of the lowest priced units that you can get, it is the prettiest of all the Woo Audio amplifiers, at least in my opinion. So I would keep this if I had to get rid of everything else. This will be the thing that I keep. Now, I think it's about time that Tujan's here. He's excited right now because he got a new car.
I'm gonna just drive right in.
Okay.
And then you're gonna zoom in on my license plate.
No, we're not doing this.
You're gonna do that.
No.
And then when I come out, you're just gonna have a camera right in front of me. I'm just gonna be like. 안녕하세요.
So, dude, Tujan, what do you think, man?
I'm really impressed. This is like the friendliest version of LS50s I've ever heard, like
Yeah.
setup wise. Like knowing that they're the meta, I know that the meta and the regulars, there's a bit of a difference. It's a little bit better, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more friendlier in terms of genres of music. But LS50s can murder you if you're playing the wrong track. So when I was listening to the system right here, I was playing my regular, audiophile tracks.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, wow, this sounds smooth. I'm like, am I listening to LS50s right now? I'm like, this is what I like about LS50s. And then I was like, all right, something's up. This WA7 is doing some shit right now. So I played the one test track I never ever want to play with Kep LS50s or any bright speaker, quite frankly.
Okay.
And it was some 2 Chainz.
Oh, shit.
And normally in 2 Chainz, right, there are some snares that ruin me, that give me a headache. And you know what? it was palatable. It was okay. I came out a survivor.
Okay, all right.
So this is doing some stuff right here.
Also, like you were kind of worried how heavily these speakers are towed
in. Yeah, because I see LS50s and I see this, and I'm like, this is an attack right here.
Yeah, I personally like it with a heavy toe in because the monitor here is a 48-inch.
Yeah.
It's a big monitor, so I have to have that toe in to be at my ear, like level, I guess.
No, I like what I'm hearing right now.
Now, the description of sound that I gave was for the preamp section, but also it's the same sound signature for the headphone section. The headphone section sounds equally as amazing and with the same Woo audio sound. And Tujan's having a moment here. Yo,
What?
what do you think about the
headphone
headphones?
sections or just the headphones? They
Yeah.
sound good. Like I'm impressed. This does synergize really well with the HD600s.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And you know what? I think even when compared to like what I heard with the LS50 Metas, there's a similar thing going on. I mean, it's kind of no secret, but it's never like this, like similar, where the preamp section and the headphone section.
You mean the sound signature?
Yeah, like
that's what I just said.
It's never that similar, right?
That's what I just said. You know what we should do?
What?
This is a preamplifier, right?
Okay.
We should hook it up to my stereo
Yeah,
downstairs.
but there's no remote. Like,
Who cares, man? Let's do it.
all right, fine.
Okay, so we brought it in.
We brought it to the big boy stereo room, and I can say I'm impressed.
Yeah, well, I'm impressed too.
Are you, Jay? Are you really impressed?
I am actually impressed because I'm gonna say it. In my opinion, like personally for me, in this current setup, I preferred it over my Kitsune Serene preamplifier and the Doge 8 preamplifier that I previously used in this setup. And those are full-on preamplifiers. Now, like
it's an apples to orange comparison
It
because
is.
those being full-on preamplifiers, they have a lot more inputs, they have a remote, but they do cost more,
Yep.
right? And this wasn't really designed for a stereo setup, realistically.
Yep.
But the sound, I think it was just a great idea, just bringing it down here to test it out because the sound was very rewarding.
Oh yeah, that was like in a stereo setting, like the benefits of the WA7 really showed. Like there was more depth to be had, the sound staging, like everything that was like right about tube devices, right? Tube units that I always talk about, like the sound stage, the holographic sound stage, the depth perception, the sound stage, the
sweetness.
tone, the tone, oh my god, it's really good. And it's so surprising because it's such a small unit and it just sounds better in terms of sound. It sounds better than my full-sized preamplifiers.
Now, the speakers that we were using were the Polk Reserve 200s that we've honestly been reviewing for like weeks now. Like it's been in the system for a while.
We reviewed it on our channel. We'll link in the description below. But yeah, we've been listening to it for a long time on this setup. So we know exactly, what those speakers sound like. And it's also on the ballpark in terms of pricing with the WA7, so it makes sense. However, the amplifier doesn't really make sense in
being
regards to
the
that.
Denafrips Apollo, that 150-pound beast.
Yeah, so and it's a much more expensive unit. It is overkill, but we wanted to. That's what we're testing right now. One and two, we wanted to see what these speakers can sound like with the WA7 in the chain, and that's how we test it, right? We want to make sure everything else is not a bottleneck, so that the WA7 can really show its benefits.
And we used it as a DAC as well.
We did.
So we kind of bypassed the whole Denafrips Terminator at the moment, and I'm not really upset at all.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, the sound that we're getting
Yeah.
is like the system itself was already impressive, right?
Yeah.
It was the speakers were very forgiving to many genres of music. Like, it was one of those all-rounders, as we said in our video.
Yeah.
But adding the WA7 Mark III into this system, it just made, you know, genres of music like, you know, like rock, or even just like mainstream music that you would hear on the radio sound good.
Yeah, I mean even better, right? Like the R200 is already a forgiving speaker,
Yeah.
but it just made it even more smoother.
It added a little bit more emotion to the music itself.
Yeah, and you know, it's not just more forgiving, right? It's not like smooth to an extent where it's just like mushy.
Yeah.
But it just gave, like you said, more depth, more emotion to the
Yeah, it
music.
had more technicalities as well in terms
More
of like
texture.
sound stage too.
More texture. And so what was the one thing that really stuck to you? Like one thing that was so like when we
I think it was
when we switched the preamplifier, right? What's the first thing you noticed?
It was the mid-range.
All right.
How smooth it's gotten.
Yeah.
In a way that, you know how I didn't like the Hollow May with some systems?
Yeah.
This was like kind of there, you know, when you had the Serene and the Hollow May together.
Oh yeah.
This was like that good middle ground for me.
Oh yeah. For me, it was the bass. Like, it just had more bass. It just had more bass from the R200. I mean, the R200 was already a beast of a speaker with its bass, even with the Serene or the Doge 8. But when we put the WA7 in, there was more texture, more bass. And that's really rare from a tube preamplifier.
Yeah, like when we had like the other like Doge amplifiers in here and the Doge preamp, it's not the same.
No, it's not. It's not. And I mean, again, we're comparing apples to oranges here because the WA7 is not a full-size preamplifier. It doesn't have a remote. So that is a big downside for most people. For me, it doesn't matter because my rack is right there. I just reach my hand.
Arm's length away.
Right. But like for most people, they want a physical remote, like from Denafrips or, you know, Kitsune or, right?
This is one of those instances where usually I'm very nitpicky, where I'm just like, no remote, I'm not even trying this product.
He always does that.
Right? Like, because I care about convenience, but this is a product that wasn't even designed for this application. And the results would make me, as an individual, go out of my way to stand up, adjust the volume for that experience.
Ooh, is that worth it?
Yeah, it is.
That's a rarity from Tujan, folks. But honestly, I don't think it's a big issue for Woo Audio to add remote. I think they should. You know, and in a desktop situation where you just, you know, arm's length away, where switching in the back from preamplifier to headphone section is a no-brainer in my opinion. However, I also feel like the switch can be added to the front, like on and off switch to the front, because usually when the switch is at the back, it usually means you turn that thing on and you never turn it off. That's usually the cue I get with products.
Yeah.
But in this case, you know, unless you have a little bit of room to play around with in the back, then you do have to reach in and you do have to remember where that switch is, which I got used to pretty fast, right?
Now, for me, I do get annoyed. Like, even on a desktop product, I would love a remote.
No, but I did get, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at is I got annoyed in the beginning, but like with practice, it was like, you saw me do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's very easy, you remember it. But again, when you have a remote, there's no need for that. You can do those things.
Which I honestly think is a missed opportunity.
And honestly, something that I think they can do.
Yeah.
In the 4th generation, perhaps.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe if they make a stereo version of this, because aesthetically wise, I love the way this looks.
Or if they make a preamplifier. Right? I'm not saying they're
preamplifier only.
Folks, we're not saying that they are going to, but it's just a suggestion. This is a hope. If they make a tube preamplifier, a standalone tube preamplifier with a remote that sounds like this with the classic Woo Audio, you know, sound, I think people will buy it. I think I would buy it.
Cool.
Speaking for myself. So yeah, we're very impressed. The 3rd generation, the pre-out is definitely a game changer in my books in terms of like integrating all in one desktop setup.
Yeah.
But it's just an added benefit that it just sounds great in stereo.
Like, who knew that this small feature or like, you know, small thing on paper would be such a big thing.
Yeah.
When reviewing it.
Yeah. So whether it be your power speakers, you know, amplifier, or in a stereo setting, if you don't mind not having a remote, then in terms of sound, I think it's really, really good. And I'm surprised I'm saying this because I always saw Woo Audio products as, not best bang for the buck, but like, yeah, it's worth what it's asking for.
Yeah, for
you
the
pay
sound.
more, you get more kind of game. But like this one is just, yeah, I was thinking to myself, was the WA7 this good? You know what I'm saying? You said the same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's pretty much it from us. Make sure to subscribe and click that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.